sort of trying to find ways for that to happen. And I can tell you that those things do happen in the way that we do our scholarship. I think there are ways as a Christian scholar about what kinds of questions we ask. So I was many years ago struggling with my research area is sort of corporate social responsibility and economic development, and what can corporations do to help build the third world. And I was working on some ideas, a paper about philanthropy, and a paper about how corporations deal with their multivariate stakeholders in the world. And I had gone to a conference and received some rather critical feedback from these two wonderful female colleagues of mine from University of Massachusetts at Amherst. And they're ultimate postmodern feminists, and I quote the Bible and they quote Derrida or whoever, and we have a great time together. But they had given some rather harsh feedback, and I've been thinking about that for a couple weeks. And I suppose here's where Latter-day Saint scholarship comes in. It was Saturday morning, and I was home vacuuming the floor. And I can still close my eyes, not close my mind, hopefully. I'll do that later. Close my eyes and see myself on the stairs, and there was, which can only be described, and those of you in this room might understand, a flash of insight about that topic that came, and it was literally as if a voice saying, firms manage stakeholders like they manage risks. And out of that single insight came 2 papers and a stream of research that's continued to grow. And that was a thought that I know came from a concerned Father in heaven who had an interest in what I was doing. And then Christian scholarship might actually, as a period, might actually mean that not only the kinds of questions we ask, but the kinds of answers that we give. And so about 5 years ago, the dean asked me to become involved in a new effort that we had in the school about economic self-reliance and economic development in the third world. And of course, that was a tremendously inconvenient question because I knew nothing about the third world and knew nothing about economic development and had my own head of steam going and a research program. But as I began to get interested in it, in that initial conversation, I realized that the ideas that they were talking about had legs. And they were very interesting ideas. And so I began to work in it. And it wasn't until sometime later, sometime way later, that I was looking at my patriarchal blessing. And it says, you will have a great concern for people who are less well off than you. And there was no sort of great revelatory moment that this was it, but there's sort of an emerging sense that what I'm doing is actually consistent with what I'm supposed to be doing. And things that I was told about myself that actually turn out to be very true. So, I don't know if that makes me Christian scholar with an exclamation point. I don't think so. I think if you read my work, and this may sound strange, but I would hope you would not see the sort of fingerprints of some Latter-day Saint guy writing in my academic work. I hope you'd see good scholarship. I hope you'd see solid, thoughtful reasoning. But I am nonetheless a Christian scholar because I think it's directed the kinds of questions that I ask and the kinds of answers that I might come up with, and also how I do my work. And so that's my thoughts.
By the way, Paul, the reason I invited you to be on this panel is that I see the fingerprints of you as a Christian LDS scholar in your work. And I read some of his work, so but there's that's an interesting, I meant that as a compliment.
Thank you.
Your scholarship is excellent and stands on its own, but there are fingerprints because you are.
Yeah. And because it's impossible for me not to be.
Yeah.
In that sense.
Sorry, I didn't mean to. It's okay. Other comments? Yeah.
You don't come from nowhere, as you just said. Right. So because you don't come from nowhere, you can't rise somebody coming from nowhere.
Right. But I'm not trying to physically.
Yeah.
I'm not. I don't sponsor. Yeah, I'm not sponsoring anything.
You're not sponsoring, but you're writing from your experience of who you are.
Right.
And even though you're not consciously putting it in your paper, it comes out of the way. I have a question.
Wait, he's got his hand up. So.
Okay, I really appreciate what you have to say. I guess I'm curious, and
Tell us your name.
Joe, and I left my name tag in my office.
Thanks,
I apologize. I think I might have forgotten my question now. The question I have is are you, in what you're saying, I think you say very well what it means, especially to you, but even a little bit to me, what it means to be a Christian scholar. I guess I want to ask you, are you trying to leave open, or are you trying to answer the question of what it means to be a Christian? Because you have to be a Christian first before you can be a Christian scholar, I guess, right?
So I'll respond this way. When I'm intrigued in the 84th section of the Doctrine and Covenants, in the Oath and Covenant of Priesthood, when the Lord talks about becoming the sons of Moses and the sons of Aaron. And I think there's a rather glib way of thinking about that as soon as hands are laid upon your head, presto, you become. You have become one of those, and you now are. But as I read that passage, I think there's, for me, another meaning. That becoming a son of Aaron and a son of Moses and becoming a Christian is, in fact, a lifelong struggle and a lifelong quest and a lifelong journey. So I think I'm still trying to figure out what it means to be a Christian. And I think that, I mean, as someone who's 49, there are issues of Christianity that weren't even on the radar screen at 25. And I'm sure, hopefully, if I can make it to 80 or something, there will be a whole other set of issues about what it means to be a Christian that I cannot even conceive of now. So I think that's, for me, that process of becoming isn't some event. It's becoming is, in fact, a verb, not a milepost.
So is that, if I could just follow up, is that what you see Christianity, is that what you believe Christianity ought to be for all of us?
Wow, that's a pretty heavy question.
You don't have to answer it, but I
Tell us what Christians do over Christmas holiday. That's the track you're getting into, I think.
Real Christians.
They're throwing away all the
packaging
packaging for these
kids.
I want to get away from the proscriptions. And that's why I like what you say about becoming. I guess I'm just, I appreciate you telling that story, but then you kind of leave me hanging like, well, then what should that mean for me as far as being a Christian? Not that I'm asking you to answer the question for me, but...
Well, I guess in my sort of finest humanities way, if I can leave you hanging like that, then I've done something right. And, you know, perhaps that would move you to think about it even more. But I certainly know that, you know, I go to church with a Book of Mormon in one hand, but not Glenn Beck in the other. You know, something different in the other. I won't tell you what, but... sometimes it's Dilbert, you know, sometimes we'll have to see. But I don't know, I think it's a process for everybody. So we'll leave it at that.
Did you want to get in, then we ought to move to...
No, this is good. Let me just not forget it. When you said about vacuuming having inspiration, and then we were going to address, I thought, how will people recognize that, you know, Calvin's are like this, and BOD is like this? Do you think that those of us that are LDS, and I can say, do you think that you got that inspiration because you're LDS?
I don't know, but I think I got that inspiration because I was ready for it. And I wasn't asking for it. I mean, there was no sort of deep pleading about show me the answer. I'd just been wrestling with this problem for a long time. And lo and behold, it's Saturday morning, it's time to clean the house, and I'm vacuuming the stairs, and you know, boom. And so I was ready for it. But I think of other, you know, I can think of other folks I know who are in the academy who will describe the same types of experiences, they may not say, oh, and then the Spirit of the Lord told me, because they may not know what it was or where that idea came from.
These are other people outside of...
Yeah, good Catholic scholars, good scholars who happen to be Protestant. So, no, I don't think so.
Ed, let's turn to you.
Okay. Sorry for taking so much time, Alan.
Excellent, excellent. I don't have a problem, Paul, with you being here from the great and spacious building, because as a psychologist, I'm here from the Tower of Babel. Anyway, I've been here at BYU. I'm going on my 12th year now, and I have from the very beginning, even as a student here, been concerned with these issues. Partly because of my interest in psychology and my interest in philosophy and education. So for a long time I've struggled and wrestled with this notion of what is Christian scholarship, what kind of a Latter-day Saint am I to be, what does that mean as a psychologist, and that sort of thing. And so like George, though, I feel like I'm a little clearer on paper than I am in person, so I formalize some of my remarks, and so I'll read those. What I have is, as a Latter-day Saint, I find my perspective on the question of the relationship between scholarship and faith fundamentally shaped by and grounded in certain covenants that I made when I was baptized as a member of the church. And one of the best articulations of that covenant, at least for me, is what I find in the Book of Mormon in Mosiah chapter 18, as Alma has gathered his small fugitive flock of Christians at the waters of Mormon, and has invited them to be baptized. And I think we're all familiar with the passage, but he says, if you're willing to mourn with those who mourn and comfort those who stand in need of comfort, and to stand as witnesses of God at all times and in all things and in all places that you may be in, even until death, that you may be redeemed of God and be numbered with those of the first resurrection, that you may have eternal life, then why not? What do you have against being baptized if that's the desire of your heart? And I find the most, at least in the context of this discussion in this seminar, I think the thing I find most relevant here is this notion of standing as a witness of God in all things and in all places and at all times. I find that extremely encompassing, makes it very difficult for me as a Latter-day Saint to put my religious life over here and my professional life over there as though they're entirely separate. I think the implications, not only for my daily conduct of my life, but also for the scope and nature of my scholarship, are quite profound, quite extensive, and radical. Of course, time limitations aren't going to allow me to really launch into that. So I'm just going to try and focus on a couple of quick things that come to mind. 4 basic areas of concern for me relative to this covenant to stand as a witness. For me, then, the first matter of scholarship I see that covenant impacting is the way I need to consider the purpose of my scholarship. There are, of course, many purposes for which one might undertake the life of a scholar or a particular line of scholarly study. For example, the satisfaction of one's curiosity, a strong sense of wonder about the world, personal vanity, pride, ambition, a need to be of service to others, a desire to be recognized for one's insights or intellect, a sense of obligation to knowledge, truth, science, humanity, history, what have you. There's a lot of different ones. As a Latter-day Saint, for me, the covenant that I entered into at baptism provides me with a slightly different purpose, or at least reminds me of a different purpose, and that is to stand as a witness of God, that my scholarship is to be a form of witnessing. Now, I don't mean by that that scholarship needs to be devotional in nature, or that our scholarly writings must be amply peppered with relevant scriptural references and authoritative quotations drawn from the writings of this or that ancient or modern prophet, though I don't declare that such things are inadmissible in principle. What I mean, rather, is that no matter what our area of scholarship or topic of interest or expertise may happen to be, we must never lose sight of the fact that the Lord expects us to think, speak, act, and write truthfully about whatever scholarly matter lies at hand, and not only in ways that bear witness of His goodness and loving involvement in the affairs of His children and His creations, but also in ways that can serve as invitations to others to greater relationship with Him.